Today on the show, our guest is Paula Pagano from Corcoran Global Living in San Francisco Bay Area. Let me tell you a little bit about Paula. Originally from New York, Paula Pagano moved to San Francisco in 1980 and became the top sales agent in her office her very first year, which is an incredible accomplishment in and of itself. And she's remained a consistent top sales producer for over 40 years. Paula has marketed and sold many unique properties, including historic landmarks, large apartment complexes, and celebrity homes. In addition, Paula is a best-selling author on Amazon with over 40 rave reviews for her two books, Secrets of a Top Salesperson, How Emotions Make or Break the Sale, and Getting the Property Sold, which is SOUL''D. Her books have been endorsed by Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank and the legendary sales trainer and author Tom Hopkins. To learn more about Paula, please go to her website, paulapagano.com, and I'm going to spell that PaulaPagano.com. And also for the two books I mentioned, if you look in the show notes of this podcast, we will have links directly to her books, which we encourage you to go pick up. Paula, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone.
Paul and I were having a great time chatting just before we started. And then I said, okay, we got to start our show because we were having a fun time. And I always love talking to agents in San Francisco because everybody in this country looks to agents in San Francisco and says, how do you do that?
So funny.
But tell us about how you got into real estate. We'd love to hear about how you started.
Well, most people in life, they go to high school, college, and then they have a plan. But oftentimes the plans don't turn out like you started. So my plan was I was in pre-med in college.
Wow.
Yes. And I was a medical researcher after college. But the thing was, the reason I got into medicine and biology is I love science and I love animals. Well, I had to experiment and kill animals.
Oh, it's tough.
And it just got to me. I just couldn't do it. And so actually, here's a little detour. I wanted to go to California. The Mamas and Papas song, California Dreamin'. And I was from upstate New York in those cold, wintry, winters. It was hard. So I went to California and I first stopped in Laguna Beach for about a year. I got my license there. I wasn't very successful. So one tip I'd like to give to real estate agents who are newbies: be persistent. Keep, knocking on doors, handing out your card, networking, whatever you're doing. And if you have transactions that fall apart, keep on working. Wake up every day, it's a new day. You know that song, It's a New Day?
I do.
Just remember that song. So anyway, I lived in Laguna Beach. It was beautiful. But then I went on a week vacation to San Francisco and I fell in love with the city. Yeah. Very cosmopolitan. The architecture was beautiful with the Victorians, Edwardians, and the marina style, the big mansions. It had a little bit of everything, and it's a very diverse culture. So I felt more at home there because I had traveled a lot in Europe. So I moved up knowing nobody. And I said, you know what? I wasn't that successful that first year in Laguna, but here I'm going to take sales training. And that's what I did. And so I became the top agent in my office the first year, and then I was a consistent top producer for many, many years. And that's how I got into real estate. And by the way, why real estate? My landlord in Laguna knew I was unhappy and I didn't want to go back into the medical research field. And she said, I'm a widower twice and a widow twice, and I bought property. And I raised 3 sons on my own. And that's how I did it, get into real estate. And that's what I did. And I have no regrets.
So when you moved to San Francisco, that's an incredible story, by the way. When you moved to San Francisco, you had, I'm assuming, a very small, if not a non-existent sphere of influence.
I had none.
So how did you start building your business? We'd love to hear that.
So I was in the office a lot, and I learned by listening to what other more senior agents were doing. When they needed help, I was right there. So I'd help them. Whenever I could, I'd have an open house. I was hardworking, and I believed in myself. I believed I could do this. And really, some agents will want to start at the very top. And
Sure.
multi-million-dollar properties, because there's so much money in it. I didn't do that. I'm more an academic person than I am a socialite. And so I just worked hard and studied hard, and that's how I did it. And people saw that in the office, and some were senior agents, they couldn't handle all their clients. So I'm getting referrals back and forth from the agents in my office. That's how I started. And then a call would come in, I'd be working late at night, and I'd be the one grabbing the call because no one else was there. So this was obviously before social media and the like. And I advertised the best I could. So I put money, and I believed in education. So I was taking sales training all the time to learn a little of this, a little of that.
I'm curious, being that you were a pre-med student, which is one of the more challenging ways to get through undergraduate. You get an undergraduate degree. At least I was pre-med when I started in college as well. And I made it a year, and then I was like, what am I doing? I am not suited for medicine. And it just wasn't, I hadn't really thought enough about it. Then I switched to something else, and that was a much better fit. But the amount of discipline it takes to pursue that, that sort of degree is quite intense. And so I'm curious if that helped you, because you mentioned being an academic, which makes sense, if that helped you sort of study the market and really understand, the knowledge side of things that maybe a lot of realtors wouldn't dive as deep into.
Yes. And I'm going to answer that yes and no. So this is how I'm going to answer it. Is I am very disciplined. So if people have come up to me because they know I made good money and I have a very nice lifestyle, and they said, I want to be a real estate agent. I'm personable. But they don't have, the real work ethic that you need to have of being a good agent. Except like I said, there are people who are so well connected, and again,
Sure.
I was not, that they can have, go to cocktail parties and do transactions and meet all these, and just sell 2 or 3 properties a year and be making tons of money. That wasn't me. And that's not the average real estate agent. Okay, those are the exceptions. If you're in real estate, you got to follow through, you got to work hard, you got to be creative. So that's something else I think that distinguishes me from other agents. I like to problem solve. So if a buyer and a seller meet head on and they're having problems communicating or coming to an agreement, it is my job to go in. Again, here's the emotions, soften everything, and make it work. Now, it doesn't work all the time. And if it doesn't work all the time, then you need to know when to cut loose and move on. And that's also another important quality for those new agents out there, is when do you move on? Because some people just are too difficult and they take up too much. One of my friends says, brain damage. And so it's just not worth it. And you just have to say, bye-bye.
Yeah, it's okay to, and I don't like the word fire, but it's okay to fire a client. There's probably a softer word for that, but to end the relationship and introduce them to another agent, maybe that
Yes.
is a better fit. And maybe even earn a referral commission, I suspect. But
Yes.
the idea of being able to say, hey, I'm not best suited. In fact, let's talk. We weren't going to talk about this, but I'm very interested. How do you have the conversation with a client that you're realizing this is not working for them? It's not working for me. Do you have any suggestions about how to terminate that relationship?
Yes. So you turn it back to them. It's about them. It's not about you, even though it may be about you.
Right.
So I'm going to give an example. So a red flag happens when clients have fired another realtor and then they want to see you. Okay, they want to work with you. So that's automatic. You should be cautious.
Sure.
Why did they not like the other agent? And then ask them why. Meet with them, give them a chance, because some there are lousy real estate agents out there. So
Sure.
that does happen. But then dig deeper and find out what their motivation is. Why are they selling? So I had this one couple who had their property on the market for a while. They got an offer. They didn't like it. They said, our property is worth more. Mm. So I went and I met with them, and I knew that they were going to be very difficult. I knew. And I thought, I just don't have it in me to fight with people.
Yeah.
But there was an agent in my office who I get along with, though, fine. I like her, but from a distance. I mean, she's really, really tough, So I thought, I bet, I don't want to mention her name, so-and-so I bet could do this, though. So I called them up and I said, I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I realize you want a really high price. And I don't think I'm the agent for you, because I know a younger agent who's more aggressive than myself. And I think she could get you your price that you want. And I think that's a better fit. He was thrilled that I was so honest. He said, Paula, I'm going to take you out for a drink. That's so nice. You're so straightforward. And she did sell them. She did sell the property. And she had to kick in a little commission, because otherwise it wouldn't have happened. And I got a good referral fee, by the way. I got $10,000 from.
That's a good fee. Yeah.
And if I had done it, I can be tough on the outside, but I'm really sensitive. And I don't think I would have lasted. He was just too difficult for me, not for her. She did it.
I love what you said earlier. Is you said, I am a problem solver. And this is another example of you identifying a problem that you and this seller were not maybe the perfect match. You recognize that. You recognize that their problem too is they wanted to get a certain price point that you didn't feel was in line with reality or what you were willing to do. And you solved the problem for them. And you still, obviously, people just want really honest, good advice. And you did that. And I imagine that client probably thinks, it wasn't your client anymore, but still probably thinks super highly of you. And I would assume probably would still send referrals to you as well, being of how honest you are. And it's so refreshing. So thank you for that. That is such a great suggestion for our audience about how to assess a relationship with a client. And if it isn't going well, you can have those conversations. And as long as you solve the problem, say, hey, I have somebody else that I think would be a better match. Boy, I'd be thrilled if I was a seller and my realtor told me that. I said, I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
can do this, but I have somebody that can. I'd be thrilled to hear that.
Mm-hmm. So,
Um, Go ahead,
so I want to give another example because
please.
this is a different example. I think it's important for agents to know who they are and what their strengths are and also what their weaknesses are. And that's what I talk about a lot in the book, both books actually. And because I sometimes struggled with real estate is not an easy business. It's a very interesting business. It's a very rewarding business when you're successful, but I wouldn't call it an easy job. It can be. I have a love-hate relationship when sometimes it's just, you get all clients at once or you get nothing.
Yeah.
And you don't have a commission for 6 months, and the few people you've worked with, they're not loyal, they went to somebody else. You're in a recession, nobody wants to buy anything. It just goes on. So anyway, it's important to know who you are and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So I know I'm a dominant personality. So I actually really enjoy working with first-time buyers because they need a lot of guidance and they
Yeah.
need a lot of patience. And I get a lot of joy out of it. So and right now I'm also working with a senior person who's very demanding. I told my husband today, you know what? I just know I'm going to go to heaven. I said, I listened to her go on and on. She goes off on tangents and she expects so much. She reads every line of the contract.
Yeah.
It goes on. She wants to meet with me. I have to pick her up from her doctor's appointments. I mean, it's amazing. But she has some health problems and I'm making a difference in her life.
Yeah.
And I think that's something else. When people say, I want to get into real estate, well, why? Well, I want to do it for the money. That's not enough. That's
Yeah.
not enough. I don't think. I don't know. They're not for me. But
Right.
remember, I wrote a book, Getting the Property Sold, SOUL''D.
Yeah.
So soul has to come into my job for me. It has to. For other people, maybe it's just money, and if that's who you are, then that can work. Everyone's different. And I just wanted to say another type of personality that I don't do well with is when people can't make up their minds, like the very amiable type people. They smile and smile, but they can't make decisions.
Yeah.
And eventually you got to make a decision. And I finally said to some client, listen, you've looked at 50 properties, now's the time. There's not, you can, buy now and then wait and watch your property accumulate, or you can wait to buy and never buy because the prices get too high. And if people won't, sign on the dotted line, I'll give them a couple months, but if they won't, then again, it's time to just let them go. And sometimes it's not even, it's just a gradual letting go. Or sometimes, I might be honest, I don't think you're motivated enough, and just say, you're a lovely person, don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I don't think you're ready. Come back when maybe you're more ready.
And that also is a very honest conversation to have, and probably goes pretty well because it's still respectful of the fact that the buyer is maybe on the fence, or but you're saying, I'm not sure you're ready right now, and you can come back when you are. And I think that, boy, that's a really elegant and delicate way, I think, to have that conversation with someone that could be perceived as rejecting, but but it's
Mm-hmm.
not the way that you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So,
Let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. Oh, if you have another question, I'd love to talk about how I'm Italian Irish, okay, and I have a little. I'm up from upstate New York, and I have a little Mohawk Indian in me
Oh,
too.
wow.
So
Wow.
I can be a bit of tough and a warrior, but
Sure.
the Italian usually takes over, and so I'm emotional.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that works in my favor because I'm enthusiastic about a property. I
Yeah.
like to connect to people and so forth. Then again, sometimes it gets in my way. I get frustrated if things don't go as planned. Like I said, I'm a dominant driver, so I'm always looking for the end goal.
Right.
Dominant drivers do that. Let's get to the end goal. So, and I mentioned the amiables, I sometimes have a problem with. They're great to be around, but to do business with them, it can be tough for me. So it's good. I'm going to go back to saying be self-aware of your strengths and your limitations and build up your strengths and try to just tone down your limitations.
And I have a suggestion for our audience. I'm curious to get Paula's take on this. If you're maybe not as aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are, if you're not as self-aware, obviously there's lots of online resources where you can take tests to determine some of those strengths and weaknesses. And you can also ask your friends and family to give you an honest assessment. And what you could do is, if you want to really make sure people feel comfortable doing that, set up an anonymous survey and send it to your friends and family and say, I really need to know, what are my strengths and weaknesses? What am I good at? Where do I struggle? And what advice do you have for me? It maybe as a realtor or just in life in general. And you will be shocked at some of the answers you get. You will learn a lot about yourself from the words of and again, you're going to want to send this to people who know and care about you, and who are
Oh,
are
yes.
going to do it in a way that is respectful. But I think that is such a great thing to learn about yourself. You said a lot of good things, because I imagine once you have a good sense of your own sort of makeup, your psychological makeup, your drivers, how you sort of operate in the world, then you have a better sense of what kind of client is a good fit for you.
Right. And you know how to communicate with others. That they say, know yourself, you'll know others better. You'll be able to
Yeah.
see them better. And one thing about and why I wrote this book is I wanted to get to know myself better. So, writing is a great way to do that. And also stories. And then I could reflect, well, and by the way, the book has a lot of raw honesty. So sometimes you think, oh, wow, Paula, you're the greatest. And sometimes you think, gee, what a jerk.
Well, but that's the truth, is we all have wins and losses. We all screw up. We all have victories. And I think, we live, especially with social media now, it's so easy to think everyone else, other realtors I'm watching on Instagram or Facebook, they're all so perfect. They do everything perfect. Their
Yeah,
food is perfect.
yeah.
Their clothing's perfect. Everything's easy. And they have just as many challenges as any other agent walking around, any other human being. But it's sometimes easy to forget. People don't usually post their failures on social
No.
media, so it's easy to forget that we all struggle. But sort of having that self-awareness of where you struggle is probably so critical. It just helps alleviate some of the suffering, I think, as you grow your business. Let's talk about the book, because I am so impressed with your book. And we do want to also just mention the title again, which is called Getting the Property Sold, SOULD. But let's talk about that. So tell us about the book. And I know you mentioned, well, I'll sort of preface this by saying I just purchased a primary residence myself. Wasn't my first, but I hadn't done it in quite a while. And I had forgotten, and I'm in the industry. I'm not a traditional realtor. I don't practice, but I work at an office. We have about 800 realtors at our company. But I'd forgotten, even though I work and live in this, how stressful it is to buy a property, even when I'm in the industry. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had a new really profound respect for realtors dealing with buyers, whether they're first time or I wasn't a first time, and just how stressful it was for me. And I have all the resources possible at my disposal. Most buyers and sellers don't have these kind of resources that I have access to. And I'm curious about, I just was thinking, boy, a realtor is a good part of their job for people like me is being a stress reliever, telling me everything's going to be fine, don't worry, but really having that sort of emotional maturity to be able to call me when I'm freaking out.
Yes. So, it's back. Why is buying a home so stressful? Well, I think there's a few, or emotional. And I think there's a few reasons. One is it's probably the biggest investment you're ever going to make. Another is a lot of people really identify with their houses.
Yeah.
So the homes they buy is an extension of themselves. So if a seller's selling, a lot of times they're having trouble letting go.
Yeah.
And then buyers who go in and they get very, very attached, and then maybe there's another buyer out there too who bids higher and you don't get it. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And then once you just say, okay, the offer's been accepted, and then they think, oh, we're done. No,
Right.
no, you're not. The roller coaster's going around the corner. It's going to go down fast, and something's going to come up. I
Something's going to
have
go
never
wrong. Yeah, for
been
sure.
in a real estate transaction where something doesn't come up, and
Yeah.
usually unforeseen. So like one time we were about to close, and all of a sudden something came up on the title. We couldn't close. Another time, a lender ran out of money. He couldn't
Wow.
fund. There was
Wow.
nothing we could do. Another time, recently, a seller, we had an offer accepted, and then we went for the inspections. The night before, the agent called me and said, you're not allowed in.
Oh no.
I had like 3 inspectors scheduled for 9 o'clock the following morning.
Wow.
Yeah, and the seller had decided she didn't want to sell. Gradually, over a period of a few weeks, I found somebody who knew the agent, because the agent wasn't communicating to me what was happening. So I was able to, through this other person who was in real estate, find out what was really happening, went back to the agent, and somehow we sweetened the deal just a little bit and did a few little things. Oh, she didn't want to let go. And it was a house with 4 cottages. So we told her, because one of the cottages was vacant, that she could come back anytime and visit.
Oh.
Stay minimum, maximum 2 weeks. But if she gave a month notice, she could come back. That clinched the deal.
Isn't that something? Well,
Yeah.
that's a really creative strategy. And I imagine by speaking to the other agent, did you come up with that solution yourself, or did you
Yes.
know that
My buyers
brilliant?
and I did, because my buyers really wanted it. So I don't know exactly who it was, but, and that's the other thing with real estate. When you have clients, you get, and the emotion comes into it, how do you connect strongly so that you're acting as one in a team? And I also tell clients, listen, if you're unhappy with me, speak up. Or if you think I'm missing something, speak up so I can rectify it and do what you want me to do. Then on the other hand, sometimes I'll say to a buyer, that's not realistic. We really, that's not going to go well with the seller, or that's not going to go well with the buyer. We really can't do that. We want to keep this. Do you want to keep? What's your goal? Do you want to keep this transaction together? And so communication, the emotional connection, very important.
Let's talk about how to establish a strong emotional bond with the clients. I imagine well, you've written about this. You have two best-selling books about it. But any strategies and tips for once an agent has a new client, whether it's a buyer or seller, ways in which they can deepen those connections with their clients so that they're able to have more honest conversations and be able to take that sort of feedback?
Okay, so this is, we can talk, with people. Okay, we're very diverse. We have diverse backgrounds. We have different stratas. We went to different schools. We might not have gone to college. We might be in the trades. We might be a doctor. We might be a lawyer. So what you do is you look for common ground. Now that could be, maybe they have a pet and you have a pet. Connect on that. You're going through their property, a seller's property, or sometimes you meet at a buyer's home. You see they have tennis rackets. Oh, well, maybe you don't play tennis. I don't, but my husband does. My husband loves tennis. Oh, start talking about that. Yeah. They travel. You see some books in their library. Oh, I read that book. What did you think? Or what are you watching right now? On TV. Do you have any good series? Ask open-ended questions. That's another thing. Why are you moving? What do you like best about your house? Whether you're renting it right now and you want to move, or you're selling it. And open-ended questions, they're the best. And have them talk, and and you can just get off so easily on different tangents and find a connection. Like I said, this one senior lady and I, well, it turns out she confessed to me she has some back problems. And I said, I have in the past too. And she said, well, I was thinking of getting a back brace. And I said, well, I did get one for a while and it really helped me. Well, so now she's got an appointment and I'm taking her to get fitted for a back brace. I mean, you never know what you're going to, what's going to happen. And then we travel a lot. And I told her I was Italian. And she said, oh, well, the color I painted my house, this blue, that was when I went to Italy. And I loved the houses that were painted this color blue. You never know what you're going to find out about people. It's really, and you think you have nothing in common, but yeah, this particular woman's Asian, and she's talked about, if you listen, she talks about all the trouble she's having with COVID, and that, people, she can't go to the grocery store because she's afraid she's being attacked,
I interviewed recently, and sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I interviewed recently the AAPI realtor. I believe the association is ARIA, which is for Asian American realtors, and she's in San Francisco as well. And she was telling me in San Francisco, in particular, the Asian community, the realtor community is as you said, they're afraid because of all of the violence. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was just reminded me that if you listen and pay attention to your clients, you get to learn about what's going on in their lives.
Yes. So that's a lot of it. Connecting. So I also taught a few real estate classes, and sometimes things are pretty simple. I said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be listening twice as much as you're talking.
So a lot of, basically, it's like get curious about your clients.
That's a wonderful, and she and I were just talking about that. And we said, curiosity, that's like, I said, that is such a understated virtue of people. Curiosity, boy, because it's a neutral word, doesn't turn anybody off. But boy, that is true.
Yeah, and I think that most of us are a little, especially in the last year and a half, we're a little starved for connection, and now is a really good time to reconnect with, your sphere of influence, learn what's going on in their lives. If you didn't stay in touch with them during the hardest times of the pandemic, now's the time to find out how that was for them. I didn't get, outside of my friends and family, I didn't get a lot of the professional service people that I employ in my life calling me asking how I was doing. And realtors
Huh.
have a really interesting bond with their clients where they can actually ask those questions. It would be a little strange for my accountant. My accountant just wouldn't do that. I love my accountant, but I don't think she's going to call me and say, how are you doing with the pandemic? Now, I would have appreciated the call. I don't expect it, but a realtor can really step into that role and ask those non-business questions about someone's life. And I think it's a really
Yes.
unique industry where most industries, it doesn't really lend itself as easily to having those conversations, but real estate does because it's such a personal industry.
Yes, it's very personal. Yes. And I did reach out to my clients. I actually
Yeah,
sent them a little small gift, just thinking,
sure.
especially when the pandemic first hit, because
I bet.
everybody, what are you going to do with your time? And it was just, we didn't know. I was, washing my hands, washing all my food. I was washing all the counters. I was like, I wouldn't pick up my newspaper. I'd leave it outside for a day. So maybe there were
Sure.
germs on it. Everybody
Sure.
was so
We all
stressed
did it.
out.
Yeah.
So I sent them a little gift, and it pays off. And people called me who I hadn't heard from in a long time, and we just talked.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about, you're in San Francisco, certainly notoriously one of the most challenging real estate markets in the United States. New York and San Francisco kind of battle back and forth for most challenging. But right now, I imagine there's still probably an inventory shortage in your area. You have low interest rates, so there's lots of buyers out there. People can afford more than they could, when interest rates were higher, but low inventory. So I'm curious on how because you work with first-time home buyers, how you're how you're navigating that with them and explaining to them that there really is a lot of urgency when you find a property these days, and what those conversations sort of sound like.
Yeah. So I'll talk about this one couple who looked about 6 months before the pandemic hit, and she had a year-old. Well, then she got pregnant again. So now
Oh, wow.
they're in a small apartment. Now they're really pushed.
Yeah.
So we had looked in San Francisco, a little bit in the peninsula, and we said, we got to spread out. San Francisco, you're not going to afford. Just it's not going to happen. She's a stay-at-home mom, and he makes good money, but it's just a one income.
Yeah.
So we went out to the East Bay, and we looked in the East Bay, and we kept going farther and farther out because it was more affordable.
Sure.
So we did miss out on one house, and it was an unfortunate thing. So here's the up and down roller coaster. I just want to talk about this again.
Sure.
Because what happens. So both offers came in close, but one offer came in a little, two offers came in. One was ours. One was a little higher, but they were so close, and they really liked my buyers, and they liked me. So they called me up and they said, will you go up to, another 20,000, I think it was, or 30,000. And so I said, wait a minute, I'll call my buyers. So I called my buyers. They thought about it. Then I got back, and they finally said yes. It was about an hour. It took them a while. You can't
Sure.
pressure,
Yeah.
And then we went back to the other people, and they said, oh, we
Oh,
didn't
no.
hear from you.
Oh.
So we took the other offer.
Oh, wow.
That was, and not to give us a
Oh,
chance to say,
yeah.
and that was heartbreaking for my people. So
Yeah.
it's just to have a lot of compassion. So stuff does happen. I mean, even when you do your best. So we moved out farther. That was in Berkeley. So then they found a house in Lafayette.
Mhm.
And I said, Paula, we want to see this house. And I said, okay. And I went online, the MLS listings, and I looked at other available houses. So I took them on a tour and showed them 5. The house that they liked was beautiful. Everything was done, just gorgeous. So they looked at that, and then they looked at another one about the same price. But the sellers were living there with 3 kids, and they had 2 big dogs, and you stepped in their yard and you have to bypass all the dog poop.
Sure.
It wasn't staged, it showed terribly, but
Yeah.
the potential was there. So they said to me, well, what do you think? And I said, well, the property that you called on, they will get probably 10 offers. It was really underpriced. And so I said, but this other property, if you like it enough, and they said, we like the floor plan better of this other property and we can fix it up. And so I said, well, we should go for that. And so they did, and they got it.
Wow.
And so they didn't waste their time with the other one with 10 offers that we didn't think we'd be able to get. So one thing I think I do, and the academic part of me, is I study the market.
Yeah.
And you had asked me before, does that help? Yes, I study the market, but I don't study it reading the newspaper and all, everything's going to, hell in a handbasket. I don't listen to bad news, okay? Because that gets negative. But I will look at statistics and I will kind of study it. And then I also have, because I've been selling and I'm also the sold part, I'm very intuitive. I usually come up with a price in my head. And that usually is what it goes for. Wow. And I have had such good luck, even in multiple offer situations. I had one winning streak where 9 buyers I got into contract, 9 in a row.
Wow.
And didn't have to, because sometimes you have to prepare your buyers, it may take 4 or 5 times. One buyer I worked with, it took us 8 times before we got into something. So you never know. But to study the statistics, and I'm not saying the news, I wouldn't read too much about news. Our politics are divisive. It's just, it's not a time to sell. There's no properties on the market. Don't listen to this. We'll work with what we have. And we find a property that maybe is not, I said it probably won't be, I say to first time buyers, it probably won't be your end all house. This is a stepping stone. So you will, eventually get into house. But if you don't move now, you're just going to be renting.
Yeah. Wow. You just said so much. I will encourage, once again, everyone listening or watching right now, head over to Amazon, pick up both of Paula's books, which is the first one is Secrets of a Top Salesperson. I certainly would like to know how somebody has been a top salesperson, top saleswoman in a very difficult city to be a real estate agent for 40 plus years. So Secrets of a Top Salesperson is available, as well as her newest book, which is Getting the Property Sold. And then again, that's SOUL''D. And also, please, everyone, go check out Paula's website as well, which is paulapagano.com. And if there is anyone in the Bay Area, whether they're in the city or somewhere outside, and they are looking to work with a top realtor for 4 decades, which is an incredible career in this industry, who has the knowledge and the compassion to help you through all of your transaction needs, reach out to Paula. And Paula, what's the best way someone should reach out to you if they want to work with you?
By my email, which is easy, Paula Pagano realtor@gmail.com, or go to my website.
yeah, go to the website, paulapagano.com, or email her at her Gmail account. We will also have those in the show notes should you want to reach out to Paula. Paula, I could speak to you for many other hours because this is such a wonderful conversation, and the amount of value that you provided to our audience is really insurmountable. So I'm going to encourage all of our listeners and viewers once again to pick up her books. She's a fantastic realtor, and she really talks about, I think, one of the most challenging parts of the business, which is the emotional connection and why that ultimately, wins the sale. So please pick up her 2 books. And on behalf of our audience, Paula, we want to thank you for your time. We know how busy you are, especially now with the market the way it is, that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to come on our show and provide some value to our audience. And on behalf of Paula and myself, we want to thank our listeners and our viewers for continuing to support our show. And we ask before you sign off on this episode to do just one thing: is tell a friend. Think of one other real estate professional that could benefit from hearing this great interview from Paula, and send them a link to our show. The easiest way to do that, if they're not a podcast person, just send them to our website, which is keepingitrealpod.com. They can stream every episode we've ever done, including this one, right from their browser. If they are a podcast person, have them pull up a podcast app on their phone, search for Keeping It Real, and hit the subscribe button. Thank you to everyone for continuing to support our show. Thank you once again to Paula. This was fantastic, and I hope to have you on again. But Paula, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. It really was fun. Thank you.